Thank you for taking time from your busy end of school year schedule to join our webinar today. I know that many of you are celebrating graduations and commencement ceremonies. It is a great but busy time of year. My name is Robin Hebert, and I work here at CPE in the K-12 Policies and Programs Unit. Over the past year, I've seen and worked with many of you on dual credit in Kentucky, and we've seen a lot of progress and a lot of change. I'm always excited to have the chance to share about the work Kentucky is doing with dual credit. And as you well know, our state is not afraid to get out on the edges of what's new in this area, especially if it means we're opening doors for students and making a difference for their future careers and their future lives. So thank you for joining today as we discuss two very important topics: the dual credit policy revisions and the implications of Senate Bill 150 for practitioners. I'm honored to welcome today my CPE colleagues, Dr. Amanda Ellis, Dr. Melissa Bell, and Dr. Jennifer Fraker to kick off our session with just a few words of welcome. Amanda, would you like to begin things for us today?
Sure. Thank you, Robin. And I want to thank everyone for joining. As Robin said, we know this is an incredibly busy, hectic time, but a really important topic and one that we've received lots of phone calls about. So we wanted to be intentional today, bring together as many stakeholders as possible who have an involvement in some form with dual credit to hopefully get the information you need and to be able to offer questions that you may have and things that we can address to you, if not today, at a later time. So thank you for being here. I won't delay us any further. And Robin, I'll turn it back to you.
Thanks. Melissa, would you like to greet the guests and say a few words?
Yes, thank you, Robin. Hello, everyone. I'm Melissa Bell. I'm Vice President of Academic Excellence and Student Success here at the Council. I probably don't have anything else to say that Robin and Amanda haven't already. I just want to welcome you for those in the post-secondary sector. I hope you had a wonderful spring semester, a wonderful academic year, and all your commencement activities went well or going well this week. I know a couple of you are finishing up this week. And our friends from K-12, welcome. I know your academic years are winding down and this is an incredibly busy time. So I appreciate you taking the time to join us today.
Thanks. And Jennifer.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Great to be here with you. I'm Jennifer Fraker with the Council on Post-Secondary Education, and happy to address any policy questions that you might have. This is exciting work. It's been a long time coming. Certainly, as we all know, what great efforts we've had within our state since 2018 and all the momentum around dual credit. So happy to be here today and look forward to speaking with you.
Thanks, Jennifer. I do want to share the titles and the information about our three CPE colleagues. I know that they would be happy to connect with you later on to answer any questions, or if you'd like to contact them in the future. So thanks again, Amanda, Melissa, and Jennifer, for kicking things off for us today. Our agenda today will include a couple of quick presentations about the policy revisions and annual reporting. This will be followed by a few minutes to address any questions that you may have. After that, we'll hear a short presentation from our friends at KDE about their Senate Bill 150 guidance document, followed by another short response from CPE and another time for question and answer. Our session is short today, so we may not have time to address every question during this hour, but we will follow up with any unanswered questions following the webinar today. So you're welcome to drop questions into the Q&A box that you may have. We'll be able to see those. We'll address as many of them as we possibly can. It's my pleasure to introduce our presenters for today's session. After a brief look at the updates to the dual credit policy, we'll be joined by Travis Munsey for a look at the annual reporting requirement and how CPE can support that annual reporting. Later, we'll be joined by Mickey Ray and Reagan Satterwhite. They are friends from KDE, and they're here to share key points from KDE's guidance documents related to Senate Bill 150. This will be followed by a quick response from CPE's General Counsel, Travis Powell. I'm truly grateful for these individuals who have given of their time and expertise to be with us today. So I want to jump right into just a few of the sections of the policy that I wanted to highlight today. So in classic Simon Sinek style, let's start with our why. We know that research shows us that students who participate in college and high school programs, especially in dual credit, are more likely to graduate high school, enroll in college, persist in college, and complete a college degree or credential. And this is what we're all about. We know that all students can benefit from participating in dual credit, but that especially students who are experiencing poverty or other student groups who are underrepresented in higher education can benefit the most. And we know that these students experience the most positive impacts on their ability to access and complete college. And this is particularly true for programs with strong student support and programs that are intentionally designed to promote equitable outcomes. We know that what we do really matters for student outcomes. Dual credit allows students to complete their degrees or credentials at lower cost than the traditional high school and college model, and many are provided at low or no cost, many thanks to our dual credit scholarship program. So dual credit provides an opportunity for growth and exploration, like an introduction to college that might include a wide range of course options, rigorous course content, and high post-secondary expectations. We've heard so many of you talk about those things throughout this year. Students needing to develop better study habits and understand a college culture. So in summary, college and high school programs, especially dual credit, offer this bridge between K-12 and higher education that gives students this strong on-ramp to their first year of college and the opportunity to explore their educational and career options while they're still in that familiar environment. I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but I just wanted to highlight how that our national and state research studies consistently show that dual credit improves the rates of college access and completion, particularly for our students of color, our first generation college students, and other student populations who have been underrepresented. So we also know that students with disabilities may also find considerable value in participating in dual credit. So these proven programs are really important for advancing student success, and our partnerships and the alignment between secondary and post-secondary education and the workforce are providing the seamless transition for students. And we know how important this is, especially now. So what is Kentucky's vision for dual credit? The policy articulates that our vision is to provide all Kentucky students, high school students, and that means every high school student, with the opportunity to participate in dual credit. We know that not all students will take advantage of this opportunity. Some will choose not to, but we want them to have the opportunity in that supported environment to help them achieve their post-high school plans. And we want them to be able to significantly reduce the cost or the time to a college degree or credential. So what do we know about current rates of participation in Kentucky? We know that dual credit has steadily increased since the 2016-17 school year, largely due to the dual credit scholarship program being introduced. There's also been tremendous growth since that time, but there's still work to be done. We know that white female students take advantage of dual credit at higher rates than other student demographics do. So we hope to change that such that all students have the opportunity to take advantage of this incredible opportunity. So I'd really like to acknowledge our partners at Kia, especially my friend Becky Gilpatrick, who has really helped me to better understand the dual credit story. We know that the number of unduplicated students who are accessing dual credit, the dual credit scholarship program, continues to increase, and that it is at a record level for the current school year. And additionally, we know and we appreciate the state's considerable investment in all of these programs. So shout out to the Kentucky Lottery for providing funding for the dual credit scholarship programs. So now that we know Kentucky has dual credit firmly off the ground, it is a good time for us to think about and reflect on how to make the experience even more meaningful and more impactful for our students. So in our stakeholder groups this past year, I've just heard this popular and somewhat comical refrain about random acts of dual credit. I think my friend and colleague from KCTCS, Harmony Little, first introduced me to this term. We all agree that it was important to define what an ideal dual credit experience would look like. And so here's some of the words from the policy that we think will help to communicate the priorities for secondary and post-secondary partners. First of all, we all care about this careful selection of meaningful coursework, courses that are aligned to a student's pathway, courses that are transferable and rigorous, and that will lead to profitable employment, especially in those high-demand career sectors. Secondly, the experience should help students develop that sense of belonging that we've talked about so much this year. And the idea that I can accomplish the goals and meet the high expectations and rigor of post-secondary coursework. This is a really important aspect of building persistence and worthiness for college. Thirdly, students should understand where they are going college and career-wise and how their dual credit coursework will help them get there. Fourth, that communication should be clear. It should be a priority from high schools and colleges, and that all students and their families should be aware of this opportunity, even as early as middle school, so that they and their families can get there together. You know, too often we hear that by the time students and their families learn about dual credit, it might be too late for them to meet the requirements for enrollment, or you know, they just might not be able to get things together to really take advantage of the experience. Another addition to our 2023 revision of the dual credit policy is our first of its kind dual credit attainment goal. When I say first of its kind, I mean first of its kind in the nation. I know that Dr. Aaron Thompson is really proud of this, the president of CPE. He's a big fan of any good firsts in Kentucky in education. So we're super proud to have articulated together what we'll accomplish together by 2030. And I do want to clarify that this goal does not imply that we want students to take only one course or that we're shooting for C's. We definitely want everyone who is currently taking advantage of dual credit courses to continue to do so. The point of this goal is that we want to add to what we currently have, especially by opening up access to more students who currently do not have access or who are not taking advantage of the opportunity that dual credit affords. And we do want the experience to become more equitable, such that the student demographic taking and passing dual credit courses more accurately matches Kentucky's high school student population. So as we mentioned before, we know that some student groups are not represented well enough in our data. And so we're prioritizing growth among these students. So how will we get there? The policy revision identifies 6 really specific strategies that we think will move the needle in the right direction. And rest assured, CPE is already directly working on these efforts. We have significant effort toward implementing these strategies. The first one is to prioritize access among students with limited or no access. The second is to ensure that these dual credit experiences are very meaningful and that they relate to students' post-secondary and career goals. Third, that we would support student success in their dual credit coursework through high-quality college and career advising and academic services. Fourth, that we would continue to work on strengthening partnerships and build effective and equitable practices. Fifth, that we would maintain and communicate and, when possible, expand support for the state's dual credit scholarship program. And finally, to increase the number of teachers who are credentialed for dual credit in Kentucky. And so, as I said, CPE is very intentional about implementing these strategies and working to improve the dual credit experience. With that brief introduction to some of the changes in the dual credit policy, I'd like to turn the mic over to Travis Muncy. He's going to share some things about the new annual reporting requirement for IHEs, institutions of higher education. I know that you're eager to hear from him. Travis?
Thank you, Robin. And what I'll do is I'll actually share my screen here, and then we'll actually go through the annual reporting details and kind of split everything off into what we can get to within our post-secondary data system and where we'll need help from the institutions. Okay, and as Robin mentioned, you know, to really be able to see how effective the dual credit strategies are, we really need data to be able to, you know, build some sort of accountability infrastructure. So in order to do that, there was the annual reporting details put into the policy. So basically what this is going to allow us to do is to be able to really identify those access gaps, really be able to break the student demographics down, to be able to tell, you know, who has access, who's taking advantage of dual credit, who's not, and if we're making progress towards that overarching, you know, 50% goal for high school students. So just running through the policy really quick. So it's going to be split up into two areas. One, information from the previous year, and then information for the upcoming year. So for the previous year, it's going to be a list of dual credit courses offered by partnering schools, a list of partnering high schools, student demographic information that's going to be disaggregated by gender, race, ethnicity, socioeconomic status, and special populations. And that would also be with the total number enrolled by course and then the pass rates of those students. Description of the professional development provided to dual credit teachers and other high school partners, a description of the outreach and community activities, a list of dual credit teachers in their secondary or post-secondary institutions. And then for the upcoming year, updates to the list of dual credit course offerings, updates to the list of partnering high schools, updates to the dual credit professional development plan for dual credit teachers and other secondary partners, updates to the outreach communication plan and activities, and updates to the list of dual credit teachers in their secondary or post-secondary institutions. And then assurance that dual credit partnership agreements meet all criteria set forth for the dual credit policy. So fortunately, in the state of Kentucky, we're blessed to have a very robust post-secondary data system and also a very robust longitudinal data system that is maintained by our sister organization, KY Stats. So we do feel that, the reporting burden wouldn't be completely put on the institution. I know that, through our annual data collections that we do with the post-secondary institutions, a lot of this information is already collected in the form of enrollment, course offerings, grades, things of that nature. So we're pretty confident, or we're actually very confident, that we'll be able to get the first part of this list. So the list of dual credit courses offered by partnering schools, the list of partnering high schools, and then the student demographic information, and then the total number by course and the pass rates. Where we will need help from the institution is going to be this D, E, and F portion. So the description of professional development provided by dual credit teachers and other high school partners, descriptions of outreach and communication activities, and then the list of dual credit teachers and their secondary or post-secondary institutions, and also for anything that would pertain for the upcoming year, because unfortunately we wouldn't have that information yet. So like I said, as far as the dual credit courses, the partnering high schools, and then the student demographic information and pass rates, we should be able to get that from our existing data collections within the KPED system. We do plan to facilitate the data collection through our KPEDS DS system. And basically, this is a web application that we already have that we use to collect, our annual data collections from the institutions already. And within that application, we have what we call an on-demand section, which allows a post-secondary institution who has access to the system to securely upload a file to the system and then allow us to go in and download that file. So basically for anything that we don't have, so D, E, and F, and then A, B, C, D, E, and F of the upcoming year information, you can upload the file to KPEDS DS. What we'll do is we'll go in and pull that down, aggregate the information, and then provide it to Amanda, Robin, and their group. But basically, like I said, we should be able to facilitate it through KPEDS. The hope is that we would be able to we already have a lot of the information needed for the reporting requirements. And then what we outlined before is basically what we'll need from the institutions. What we will do is we do plan to have this as the main topic for our June institutional research directors meeting, where we meet with all the IR directors and staff from all of the public and private institutions in the state, and really go over this in detail with those folks, so that there's not any confusion around, what needs to be provided, what doesn't need to be provided. So we will follow up with the institutional research directors at the institutions. And if you have any questions about the process or, anything around the annual data collection, please feel free to reach out and ask. And with that, I will quit sharing.
Okay, Travis, I think we had one question. One question was about the recording of this session, and we are recording, and we will share the link to the recording following the webinar. There was another question from Justin Bathen at UK about the teachers and their secondary or post-secondary institutions. And so this is just simply an identification of the teacher's name and like which high school they teach at, or if they are a teacher at UK and a professor at UK who's actually teaching the dual credit course. So just the name and the post-secondary or secondary school where they teach.
And we do have a lot of that information. And one of the data elements that we do collect in our course inventory file, one is whether it is a dual credit course or not. And second is whether it's taught by a high school teacher or a post-secondary instructor. But what we don't have is any specific information about, that teacher. So we would need to have that in the collection to be able to fill in those gaps.
Right. Travis, I don't see any other questions for you or for me in the question and answer box. So if you think of questions later on, please feel free to drop those in. And so at this time, okay, we got one more question here from Jenny Sawyer. In regards to upcoming year reporting, can we still add a class in the fall to be taught in the spring? And Travis, I don't know if you want to say anything about the reporting system. As far as I'm concerned, you can add them, you can update your information at any time.
Yeah, and that shouldn't be an issue. As far as the student demographic information, so we collect that per semester. So usually we just collected the spring enrollment, and I believe we received grades at the end of the summer, so the end of August. I don't see an issue with updating the student information. But, as far as the collections where we receive the information in the first place, we will have the full academic year by the end of summer, usually. And I also forgot to say that the first report is due July 1st, and it's 2023, and it will be July 1st, there on out for kind of the deadline for providing that information.
Thanks, Travis. So if there aren't any other questions, I think we'll just move on ahead, and I want to invite Mickey Ray and Reagan Satterwhite to the mic, and they're going to share some information about KDE's guidance on Senate Bill 150. So welcome, Mickey and Reagan.
Thank you so much, Robin, and good afternoon, everyone. As she said, my name is Mickey Ray, and I serve as the Chief Academic Officer in the Office of Teaching and Learning at the KDE. And I'm joined today by Reagan Satterwhite, who is the Executive Advisor in the Office of Career Technical Education. And we're just very thankful to have the opportunity to bring forth this guidance. And I would like to begin by thanking Drs. Bell, Ellis, and Fraker for sharing that information with you. So I know that you have likely seen the supplemental guidance that I will be walking us through today. But I do think that you will greatly benefit from Reagan's contribution as well, so that they have created certain professional learning supports and permission forms that are in association with the guidance itself. So we're going to walk through that today. And certainly to frame the conversation, we very much believe that students deserve access and opportunity to these meaningful, rich dual credit opportunities that you have discussed earlier in the webinar today. And I think our fear is that in the good desire to comply with the law, that students might be adversely impacted in ways that the law does not necessarily prescribe. So I think it's very important for us to understand both, one, what the law says, and then secondly, what it does not say. So I'm going to attempt to share my screen here, and I want to show you where this guidance lives on the KDE website. And so I'm hoping that you all can see that. And I am going to have to ask for your grace. I've got multiple screens, so I'm going to have to look to the side just for a moment. But on the KDE website, we do have a page that houses all of the legislative guidance. And so Reagan and I will be living specifically today within the Senate 150 supplemental guidance. But if you're on this page, again, at education.ky.gov, you can click on the 2023 legislative guidance for emergency bills. And so within that, there's a larger explanation associated with Senate Bill 150 for multiple sections. But what we will be speaking to today is Section 2 and the curricular requirements that are associated with that bill. We will be releasing non-emergency legislative guidance in June, but I felt it was important to show you where this lives on the website. Now, what I'd like to attempt to do is shift over to the supplemental guidance. And I don't know, Reagan, if you could let me know, can folks see the supplemental page now?
I can, no problem.
Wonderful, wonderful. So what I've done, again, this is not new information for you, but I just want to walk through some of the key components. And I do want to start at the top only because I think this is a case in point in which it is important to understand that the experience of students for grades 6 through 12 is different from that of elementary students. So if a student is in kindergarten through grade 5, they are not to receive any instruction through curriculum or programs on human sexuality or sexually transmitted diseases. The law does not define human sexuality curriculum or instruction. So that is what we have. The second piece of this impacts all students K through 12. So they are not to receive any instruction or presentation, and this is really the key language here, that has a goal or purpose of students studying or exploring gender identity, gender expression, or sexual orientation. So when you look at that, there is an impact on one of our health standards for grade 5. And I show you this because, again, I think, based on our advice of our legal counsel, the health standards will be under future review in order to be in compliance with the law, because there is a connection to basic male and female reproductive body parts, puberty, et cetera. So when we're thinking, though, about the experience for students in grades 6 through 12 and their dual credit opportunities, I just wanted to point out again that the law does prohibit this connection to instruction or presentation around gender identity, gender expression, and sexual orientation. However, when you look into later sections, subsections of Section 2, I'm going to scroll. And so you can see that nothing in Section 2 of Senate Bill 150 prohibits school personnel from discussing human sexuality, including the sexuality of a historic person, group, public figure, where the discussion is necessary for the context of that curriculum. So if students are engaging with the text in that context surrounding the author or a group or an event, if that is critical context for them in engaging and understanding the course of the piece, then that would still be allowable instruction. And you can look at the second one. So you also, faculty would be able to respond to questions from students in a class regarding human sexuality if it relates to that topic of instruction. So I think it's important to note that there's the ability of faculty to still discuss those pieces. It's not as if there is a prohibition across all of these components, but it's important that it is applicable to the context of that text, of that situation, or instructional resource and material. If, though, there is something within the coursework that aligns to human sexuality specifically for students in grades 6 through 12, that is allowable instruction. But as the bill requires, it would require faculty to have parental consent, so written consent, for that student to engage in the discussion. In many ways, it would have been easier if this were opt-out language, but it does say that we must have parental consent for that student to engage in that particular element of instruction. And so that has to happen at least 2 weeks in advance of that particular course content. And so in talking about this, even with Reagan, in thinking in some of the courses, day 1, there may have to be some sort of written consent form, permission form that is afforded to students to be able to engage in that coursework. If though the parent or family says that the student may not participate in that, I did want to point out that we're required in the law to provide an alternative course, curriculum, program assignment, whatever that may be, without penalty to the student's grade or their standing in any way. But we also can have, I think, fair and real conversations with parents and families around the implications of that. And I'll just give one example. So I'll use an advanced placement course as an example. So if that student is prohibited by their parents from experiencing or engaging in certain content, if you think about AP psychology, well, there could be some coursework within that connected to human sexuality. And so there would need to be a conversation between the parents, students, and families around the implications of that. So you can have an alternate assignment, but if you are not experiencing and having access to this particular portion of the learning, that could impact the student's score on the advanced placement exam. And I think Reagan will speak to the fact that, for some of the health science courses, there will have to be conversations with building leaders, with school leaders around what the implications are if students are not exposed to all of the content as it relates to certification requirements and credentialing that will happen in association with those courses. So with that, if the student is either given an alternative assignment or if they're able to maintain that coursework, the parents also have the ability to inspect different components of the instructional materials. And so I just wanted to bring that up because I think it's quite pertinent when you think about sharing instructional materials. You can see here it says assessments or tests related to that content, instructional activities and assignments. So there is the potential for conversations that must occur around dual credit courses that could impact the sharing of those materials. And then lastly, and I'm going to turn it over to Reagan because I think you can see it better on the actual sample permission form. But with this written notification, there are certain requirements that have to be followed. So certain key components, even of the written notification to parents and families related to the human sexuality coursework. So Reagan, I will stop there and stop sharing and ask you to talk a little bit about this work as it relates to CTE as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let me interrupt for just 1 second. We had a question that I think is really pertinent to what you were just talking about. If you don't mind, Mickey, to address this question. Sure. This is from Beth Wiley at U of L. It says, how do we reconcile no presentation on gender orientation with the detail that it can be discussed if that discussion is central to the understanding of a text, historical context, etc.?
And so I can only say what we would say to local district leaders, and that would be, if there are any questions around the context of that, we are recommending that people speak with their local board attorney because those components are not defined within the requirements of the law. So in terms of the gender identity and sexual orientation and gender expression, that is very clear that they shall have no instruction in which the student is exploring that, or a presentation that would lead the student to explore gender identity, expression, sexual orientation. But if they are reading a text or doing an assignment or researching something in which the context of another writer or a historical event, etc., so they can understand the context surrounding that audience and purpose and things that would impact tone, etc., but they can't engage in activities in which they are exploring those things for that single, like as a learning goal or learning target in a class.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt. We have a few other questions, but we'll loop around to those a little later on. Okay, so Reagan.
All right, sure thing. As Mickey mentioned, my role is a policy advisor in the KDE for the Office of Career and Technical Education. And one thing that my office does is oversee Kentucky's area technology centers. We have 50 schools known as our ATCs, and altogether they make up the Kentucky tech system. And so I do want to express my appreciation to Mickey for the guidance and helping us interpret Senate Bill 150 and what that meant for our area technology centers, as all of the staff at the administration at those centers are employees of the Kentucky Department of Education in our office. CTE coursework at the secondary and the post-secondary levels often includes, on a regular basis, subject matter that would pertain to the parent and guardian permission requirements of that bill. We know that our health sciences classes, like Mickey mentioned, we have this type of content all over those courses, and in many of our family and consumer sciences classes as well. So every district is different. Their board should ultimately determine the best approach to comply with Senate Bill 150. However, our agency wants to make guidance and resources available should schools wish for them. One thing that we have done in the Office of Career and Technical Education is to develop a common permission slip for instructional content that meets the definitions of Senate Bill 150 that students must receive permission in order to participate. The permission form is used by all 50 Kentucky Tech schools. We are happy to share it in case it helps any of your schools or districts, and in case you would like to develop something similar. I will briefly try to share my screen so that you can see the permission slip. And then before we wrap up, I will make sure that I post a link to a sample form in the chat box. Does that show up okay?
We can see it.
Great. Okay, so at the very top, we begin with some information for the school and the teacher. The entire top section is devoted to information necessary for both the administration and the teacher who's going to be delivering that content. The top section says this permission slip must be completed and signed by the student's parent or guardian for the student to participate in any discussions, lectures, or assignments related to human sexuality or sexually transmitted diseases. And that language was pulled directly from Section 2, as Mickey pointed out. This form must be sent at least 2 weeks prior to any content of this nature being present. Again, that's directly from Senate Bill 150, but of course, schools may certainly decide to send it more than 2 weeks prior so that they have plenty of time to make sure all of their students receive permission. Pursuant to Senate Bill 150 of 2023, if this permission slip is not signed, the student must receive alternate instruction. And as we know in many of our health sciences classes, this content may be present multiple occasions throughout the school year. And so in courses of that nature, maybe we need to go the alternate course route if a student does not receive instruction or does not receive permission, I'm sorry. Each of the items that have a fill-in box are required by Senate Bill 150, must identify the school, the instructor, the instructor's contact information, the administrator that is designated with oversight of the program, what the course is, and a description of the content that is going to be delivered that the parent must give permission for, the dates that the course, curriculum, or program is scheduled to begin, and then a description of what that alternate assignment will be if the parent or guardian decides not to give permission for that student to participate. Let's see, I'm having trouble scrolling. Here we go. The second portion of the permission, and we did fit this all on one page, that was our goal, is information for the student and the guardian. It notifies the guardian that although course materials are not required to be reviewed, if a parent, is okay with their student taking a health science course and realizes that the content in that health science course is likely applicable to Senate Bill 150, they can give permission without reviewing the specific content. However, if the parent or the guardian of participating students would like to review the course materials, then the school must make available the curriculum, instructional materials, lesson plans, assessments or tests, surveys or questionnaires, assignment, and instructional activities. Basically, everything that has to do with the content that must be, the student must have permission for. If the parent or guardian approves of the instruction, they will sign and date below, either with an electronic signature or print the form and then sign it. Pursuant to Senate Bill Senate Bill 150. If this permission slip is not signed, the student must receive alternate instruction. So it is very straightforward. It's pulled directly from the statute. But I hope that this is helpful in letting schools understand how this could be a manageable process to make sure that students are not missing that valuable content that we know enhances their education and their career pathway and often prepares them for a credential that benefits the student going forward. So we're so appreciative of our post-secondary partners. CTE dual credit is very important to student success, and we want to figure out the ways that we can best get that information to students and also comply with the law. I will post it in the chat. You guys are free to download it and to use it and to modify it. And if you have any questions about it, please let me know.
All right. Thank you so much, Reagan, for sharing that valuable resource. And now I'd like to invite Travis Powell into the room to share some CPE comments about all of what we're learning.
Thanks, Robin, and appreciate the presentation, Mickey and Reagan. So just wanted to talk a little bit about higher ed's involvement in the dual credit as it relates to dual credit and Senate Bill 150. So we've talked with some of you all already on this issue, have given out some guidance, but just wanted to reiterate that this is very much solely a K-12 requirement. It is the high school credit portion that triggers the bill. We want students to take dual credit courses, but it's not required. So our only obligation in this process is to help districts comply. So to the extent that our teachers are teaching the course content, our professors, they need to provide all the course materials requested by the district, all curriculum, syllabi, all information related to content being taught to the in the course to the district, so they can apply the rules that you've just learned about today and determine whether or not it triggers the requirements of the bill. If it does, they'll do what they need to do on their end to ensure that they are in compliance. That will determine what students are taking your dual credit courses. It may mean that some of the courses cannot be taught depending on the nature of those courses. If that's the case, they'll let you know that. But it is not a higher ed requirement in any way. It does not require an institution to change its curriculum. Certainly can institutions can change or professors can change that curriculum if they so choose to do in order to comply, but they're not required to do so. So there's no issue with academic freedom or accreditation in that regard. This is solely a K-12 requirement, and the dual credit portion is the only requirement. The only thing that hits Senate Bill 150 is the high school component and not the college component. So if you can really think about those as being separate, that's really the way that we want to look at it. Again, I think all the requirement, and we certainly want to be in higher education, we want to be partners with the district so they can ensure compliance with the bill. Encourage you all to work with them. Obviously, there's, as mentioned earlier, there's some terms in here that really aren't defined. So they're going to take some time, especially early on, to try to kind of navigate through this and figure out what's included and what isn't. So please be patient with that and provide as much information as you can, but they'll take it from there. So we just want to be supportive of the districts and complying, but again, it doesn't require higher education institutions to change any of their courses or do anything to comply with the bill. The high school portion is the only thing that triggers it. So for example, if it falls into that second section where it can be taught with approval of the parent or guardian, they need to offer an alternative to the course. It's not an alternative dual credit course. It's an alternative high school course. So it may be to where they don't get to take dual credit. They'll have to take another course for high school credit. But again, the dual credit portion is not required. And so therefore it will not require another dual credit course to be offered, just another high school course in order to take the place of that course that they would have taken as dual credit. Really all I have, Robin. Certainly happy to answer any questions that anybody might have.
Okay, thanks, Travis. It seems like there are quite a few questions in the question and answer box about the location of the dual credit course, like the distinction between students being at the high school versus being on campus. Can you speak to that at all?
Well, I think, the determination will need to be made before it gets to that point. Again, it's whether the student will be taking, the analysis will need to be done on the front end before the course anybody takes the course. So regardless of where it's delivered, that analysis will need to take place first, and then those students will if they're in those courses, then I think you can be assured, assuming the district has complied, that they're okay to be there, wherever it's being taught. And if not, they won't be there because they will already just have decided not to take the course, or again, if it's not supposed to be offered to any high school students, they won't be offered at all. Again, that determination needs to take place on the front end.
Okay. Let's see here.
Some of these I'm just scrolling through here. It looks like
Yeah,
these have been answered, I think.
there are, let's see. There's a kind of a follow-up question to the one about where the student is taking the course. Jenny at U of L, Jenny Sawyer, is asking about when students take a course on campus, whose responsibility is it to get that parental permission form in order for them to take the course?
I mean, the requirement will always be with the high schools.
Okay.
I mean, again, coordination with the districts, being able to work with them and being open to whatever they need as they work through this. I think that's the key here. But again, this is all on it's the high school portion, the high school credit portion that triggers the bill, not the college piece. We are in the high schools, or they're on our campuses taking these courses, but the compliance piece is clearly a high school district requirement. So just work with them and let them do what they need to do, and then you should be fine.
Awesome. There's another question here about students who are over 18. Do these rules still apply if the student is over 18?
So in full disclosure, yeah, I feel most equipped to speak to the K-12 experience. And it would, if the student is over age 18, it would, if they are a public school student, they still must have experiences that are aligned to the law.
Thank you. Thank you, Mickey. All right. We also have a couple of questions about has this webinar been recorded and will it be available? And the answer is yes and yes. We have recorded the entire presentation, and we will make that available on CPE's website. We'll follow up to everyone who participated today with a link to that recording. And we also will address any further questions. There are quite a few questions still coming in, and so we're running close on time. So we will prepare answers to all the questions that have been posed today and follow up with you after the webinar about those things. So so thank you again. I'm going to share my screen and share the contact information for the folks who have been presenters today. We really appreciate everyone. So the email addresses for our presenters today are there on the screen if you want to follow up with any additional questions or comments. That would be welcome. So as we close today's session, I want to just reiterate, as I mentioned earlier, that CPE is working really hard to increase access and operationalize this dual credit policy and all the things we've talked about today with many supports. So I wanted to end today's session by sharing a few of those with you. And I believe that Heather is going to drop some links into the chat box for you if you're interested in any of these resources. So first of all, we have created an early post-secondary opportunity toolkit that contains many resources for dual credit programming. It is a living document, so I hope that you all will take the opportunity to dig into it, take advantage of what's there, and definitely give us feedback and suggestions for content that might still be needed. You know, the Kentucky Advising Academy also promotes quality advising for high school students for college and career. And so their new advising toolkit is also available now. It's linked inside our early post-secondary opportunity toolkit. So you can get access to both of those that way. We've also just wrapped up an extensive dual credit in Kentucky webinar series that featured experts from secondary and post-secondary world. In fact, I would bet that many of you who joined us today have participated in or been featured on that webinar series on a whole variety of topics. And so the best news about that is that it is also all archived, so you can access those conversations and resources even if you miss the live broadcasts. And finally, we do have an upcoming professional learning opportunity we hope you'll consider. We know we have a lot of unanswered questions in the dual credit world. So in the next few weeks, we'll officially launch a dual credit community of practice that will address real Kentucky problems of practice and develop resources and solutions that can be shared statewide. So if you're interested in participating in any of that, please give us your contact information and we'll reach out with more information. This is just like other, like TV offers. There's no obligation for signing up. We would just love to involve you in the opportunity if that's something that you would like to do. So I'm sure that you all are exhausted just like we are, and excited and encouraged about the progress we're making in dual credit, and we'll get through these challenges. We really appreciate your partnership. We appreciate all the hard work that you put in to making these quality experiences for students. We know that the student benefits are well documented and that our collective work is worth the effort that we're making. So please reach out to anyone on our team if we can help or support your efforts for local dual credit programming in any way. We love to elevate great ideas. We love to elevate innovation. So please be in touch. And thank you again to our guest experts today and all that you are doing. And thank you for joining today. Happy Friday, everyone.